Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be comparing the all-new 2022 Chevy Silverado ZR2 to the 2022 Ford F-150 Raptor, and we're going to see how these two trucks stack up against each other. Before we get in the video though, I do want to mention if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below, and I'll also include a link to both of the dealerships' websites in the description down below that originally let me film the reviews on both of these trucks. And so yeah, let's get into the review. Starting things off by popping under the hood of the ZR2, we have a naturally aspirated 6.2 liter V8 that goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 420 horsepower and then 460 pound-feet of torque, and then the axle ratio is 3.23 with the ZR2. Now moving from that over to the Raptor, we have a twin-turbo 3.5 liter V6 that goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission. Good for 450 horsepower and then 510 pound-feet of torque, and then it has an axle ratio of 4.10. So you do have a better axle ratio with the Raptor, but again, sadly, doesn't have a V8. Now, going over the front end of the ZR2, we have 11.2 inches of ground clearance. Now, so we got our 6.2L badge there on the hood, and then we got our ZR2 logo there off to the side. And I definitely love the design on the hood with the ZR2. I think that Chevy did a really good job with differentiating this compared to a Trail Boss from a front end perspective. Now it's got the flow tie, and it's got the red accent there in the center, and you got the LED accent light right there with more of the accent lighting, and then you can see with the projector bulbs and then the ZR2 logo there off to the side. And notice how everything's darkened, red tow hooks there, and then with the fog light off to the side. And like I said, especially when you see this in person, it's definitely differentiated compared to a Trail Boss from a front-end perspective. You see it, and it has this aggressive off-roader appearance, but it looks super similar also to the Tahoe Z71, which is kind of funny. But I think they did a good job with the styling on the ZR2. Definitely looks, the part to be a Raptor competitor. Now, popping over to the Raptor, you've got the accent there on the hood with the Raptor logo. Let me quickly talk about ground clearance while I'm showing a couple other elements like the marker lights and the logo and the headlights and everything. 12 inches with the 35 package, which this truck has. If you get the 37 package, you get 13.1 inches of ground clearance. And then you can see here with the rigid fog lights that come standard. And then you've got the skid plate there at the bottom with the parking sensors on the front end and a camera there in between the O and the R on the Ford logo. And again, definitely has that aggressive off-roader appearance. And, Ford was the first manufacturer to really debut that. Now, we've got 18-inch wheels here on the ZR2, 33s wrapped around that. There is no bigger tire option you can get from the factory. So if you want bigger tires, you are going to have to do that yourself. And I think that's part of the reason why it's got, 11.2 inches of ground clearance is still great, but that's why it only has quote unquote 11.2 inches of ground clearance, because it has 33s. If it had 35s like the Raptor, then I'm sure it would have that same 12 inches of ground clearance that the Raptor has with 35s. Anyways, you can see the fender flare there. And then from a side view perspective, if you cut off the front end, it looks super similar to the Trail Boss in terms of the stance and everything, but the wheels are unique. And the shock setup does look different as well, because you've got the DSSV shocks from Multimatic. It's a really cool system with like multiple chambers, and so you have different compression points. It's a really advanced system. I would say that it's different than the Raptors, but I would say it's just as capable as the Raptors from an off-road perspective to handle high-speed dampening and low-speed dampening as well. And that's one of the big key attractions to the ZR2 is the fact that it has such advanced shocks. And then notice the spare 33 there at the bottom, and then the high ground clearance exhaust tips there. Now, this one is the 35 package Raptor, so we got 17-inch wheels, 35s in the front and the rear. Again, you can get 37s as an option. If you guys are wondering with the Raptor, the benefit of the 37s again is that higher ground clearance, but you do lose travel. You can see here with the Fox shocks there, they're 3.1 inches technically in diameter. They call them the 3.0s, but they're 3.1 inches in diameter. It's an active system, so depending on what drive mode you're in will change what the shocks are doing. And being an owner of a 37 package 21 Raptor, I can tell you that the dampening is amazing on-road and off-road. You get a luxury ride on-road, and then off-road, it can handle so much. This truck can handle more than what like 99% of drivers are going to take this truck on that actually take the Raptors off-road. So it's a really, really good system. And then notice the 5-link coil suspension in the back end. This is something that I didn't mention on the ZR2 because we kind of ran out of time with the clip. But while I'm showing you guys the key fob with the tailgate drop down and remote start, the ZR2 still uses leaf springs, whereas the Raptor uses coil suspension. That's a big difference with the trucks. Leaf springs, right, is kind of like the more old school setup to go for. Obviously, there's some benefits with leaf springs, right? Reliability, and typically you'll get a higher payload capacity with leaf springs. But from an off-roader perspective, you're not going to get as much flex. Ride quality is not going to be as smooth, and you are going to get some wheel hop in the back end with leaf springs. So again, there's some benefits and there's some downsides. But you can see the whole bed setup with the outlet and the bed liner and all that. And some people are commenting that you can press the button on the key fob to raise up the tailgate. But with Silverados that have the auto raise tailgate, you can also press the button on the tailgate to raise it. And this one didn't do it. So just got to clear that up there. Anyways, from a rear end perspective, other than the ZR2 badge, it's just like every other Silverado with the bumper step and Chevrolet logo stamped on the bed. And if you look at it from this angle, again, you wouldn't be able to really tell this is a ZR2 necessarily from the rear end perspective, which is, just something, I guess, other than the exhaust tips not poking out the back, but something to consider, right? And then here's the Ford Raptor key fob. You can see functionality is the same on the key fob with the tailgate drop down. And then this one does have the auto raise function as well with the tailgate. And then notice here with the measuring chart there, LED bed light on either side, and then the power outlet in the bed. And then you can see the cargo light there with the camera at the top. And then notice here, no bed liner. Something that's interesting that I kind of learned by reviewing so many Raptors is the 37 package has a higher payload capacity than the 35 package, and it's because of the tires. So it's kind of interesting. If you want a higher payload, you got to get 37 package. But yeah, stylistically, this looks significantly different than a regular F-150, right? It's wider with the hips in the back, right? Because the fenders are actually wider, and you've got the giant Ford plaque with the Raptor logo. You don't have to get that, but I think that it is an option to get because it looks great. Marker lights. And yeah, so between the fender flares and everything, you can tell this is a Raptor. So that is one thing that is going from the Raptor from a rear end perspective, is you can definitely tell stylistically that it's a Raptor, and which is important in this segment, I think. And then popping to the interior here with the ZR2, this has the Silverado's new interior, which is a huge improvement over the previous version of the interiors that they had in the Silverados. So you can see material use is a lot nicer, and design also is a lot nicer as well. It just looks so much more upscale, and I love the neon stitching in the ZR2. I think that's cool. They upgraded the handle as well, even. They upgraded like literally everything, which is kind of interesting how that goes. And then here are the seats. So the things I like about these seats, first off, there's a lot of different like textures on the seats, a lot happening, which I think looks cool stylistically. And you got behind the seat storage. But also they'd be very, very easy to clean off. Like just because of how the material use on the seats and then how they're shaped and everything, they'd be very easy to clean off, which I, think about because, again, this is an off-road truck ultimately. Notice heated seats in the rear, and then you got vents. And then you can see here with the cup holder armrest situation. And also you can see just kind of like the padding there on the seats. But popping back over to the Raptor, you can see here with the door panel, again, I think really nice from a design standpoint, just looking at it. It isn't necessarily like luxury by any means. I mean, you've got nice leather padding, but they've kind of gone for like this sporty theme on the door panel, which I think is great. Bang & Olufsen sound system. In terms of sound systems between the trucks, that'd be a tough one. I'll think about that for a second while we keep going through the review. Anyways, you can see heated seats in the back, vents, all that. And then with the seats themselves in the Raptor, you can see with the mix between the Alcantara and the leather, looks great. A little bit more difficult to clean off, though, with the Alcantara. I will admit that, so definitely take that into account if you plan on getting the interior dirty all the time. Space is just as good with both the trucks. Of course, cup holder armrest. You always got to have that in every single vehicle. It's super important. Popping back to the front of the ZR2, you can see the same design theme continues here with the front door panel, and then you can see all the trim there with the memory seats. And then notice the mirrors that do have blind spot monitoring. And then again, the new design on the door handle, and then that double stack design with the neon stitching. Notice all of your window controls. And then you can see the speaker for the Bang & Olufsen sound system, and then the ZR2 logo. And here's the front seat. So notice here again, with the design on it, looks great. And again, would be very easy to clean off the front and rear seats with the ZR2. pedal layout down below. And then notice here with our parking brake, and then notice we got a drive mode select with our drive line select. It does have 4-wheel auto as well as 4-wheel high. And then you've got your light control next to it. And I guess quickly touching on that, the 4-wheel drive system is a little bit more of a simplistic system. And we'll kind of talk about that later in the comparison more when we compare the drive lines between the trucks. But just know with the Silverado, a little bit more simplistic. Anyways, popping back over to the Raptor, you can see here, first off, with the material, same as what you have in the rear. Now it's got all of our window controls, and then memory seats, and then you've got the carbon fiber there, blind spot monitoring for the mirrors. I like the shape of the mirror more in the Raptor, too. Bang & Olufsen sound system, Ford Performance right there, and then you can see the speaker in the headrest, and then notice the Raptor logo, and then perforated leather with the Alcantara on either side. Looks great. And you can see the padding with these seats. These are the seats to get if you want more comfortable seats. The blue seats in the Raptor are not as comfortable. I like them though. That's why I bought it. But light controls, mirror lights on either side. You got that for the outlet, and then the tailgate drop down. And again, for the design on this, I think it looks great for a lot of things. And then also, this is the big thing, paddle shifters. Look how nice those are. And, using, nice paddle shifters like that, I think is important in a truck in this segment. Again, when you're trying to sell a high-performance off-road truck, right? Where people actually use the paddles. So here's the steering wheel in the ZR2. You can see here with the leather trim all around, and then the stitching there in the center portion. And as for the controls, they're identical to what they were prior on the Silverado. Notice it still has paddle shifters, but they're just plastic radio controls down below them. They're functional, they're practical, but yeah, definitely the Raptor has a one-up on the paddle shifter game, right? But the steering wheel looks great, I think, with the ZR2. Love the digital gauge cluster. I think that's another thing that Chevy did a really good job on with the ZR2. Animation on it is fantastic. It's easy to use, it's pretty straightforward with all of the controls, and it just has a nice modern appearance to it, and just brings the Silverado into the modern era. You can see the different drive modes. So basically there's a tow haul, there's an off-road, and then there's a terrain, and then obviously a normal. So you probably, if you go off-road, you probably use the off-road mode most of the time, then terrain less often. Anyways, here's the infotainment system. So you can see the camera system. This is one of my favorite things about Silverados in general, is they've got a really good camera system. You got like the 360 views here with the truck, and you can see like just out of every single angle with the truck, all the wheel shots. Looks great. Got the zoom in function there and the receiver hitch as well. But yeah, resolution's great with the camera, and there's just so many different viewpoints. And so overall, it's a really, really good system. And then as for the rest of the infotainment system, response time's great. With the screen, it's got like a split screen function. They doubled down on some of the buttons, which is kind of funny. But anyways, you got lane departure, parking sensors. You got our auto stop start, the tailgate drop down, hazard lights, and then you can see next to it with the stability control, and then hill descent control, and then front and rear lockers here with the ZR2. So definitely adds to the off-road practicality, and that's the only truck right now in segment that has a front locker, which is kind of interesting because the Colorado ZR2 is also the only truck in its segment that has a front locker. So it looks like Chevy's kind of a little bit ahead of the curve, right? Offering that, so I think that's great. And you can see trailer brake control down below, heated cooled seats, got dual zone climate, all the practical luxury truck stuff that you expect in a modern truck, then storage space there up front. And then here's the new shifter. I like it. Obviously it does rob center console space. I saw some people complain about that, but I don't know, it feels like you're doing something substantial, and I want that in a pickup truck. That's just my personal opinion. And then you can see here with the stitching there at the top, and then wireless phone charger. And then look at the storage space there. And then a bunch of little charging ports inside of the center console, which is great. Funny dual glove box. It's just weird how that pops up. I still can't get over it. Like every time I see it, I'm like, Chevy, what are you thinking? Padding there on the dash. And then you can see the bottom glove box right there. Looks great. And then here is up top, just regular sunroof. Power setting window as well. And then you can see here with the camera mirror system. Another nice feature with the ZR2. And then here's a window sticker for the ZR2. So base price is very close to the Raptor, funny enough. It's like $65,000 Or I think it's actually technically more than the base price of a Raptor for the base price of a ZR2. But the thing about the ZR2 is there's not that many options you can add on them. Like fully loaded with every single option, you're like maybe mid 70s, but like this is a loaded up truck, and this one stickers for 70,000, almost 71,000. And this one has like all the features that I would want. There's nothing like that this truck doesn't have that I would want, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's pricing on the ZR2. Now that we're done going over the total MSRP there on the ZR2, popping back into the Raptor. Ooh. Full digital gauge cluster too. It's like all the car makers are copying each other. Anyways, here's the steering wheel. So you can see there with the marker at the top. And then really nice leather all around the steering wheel. And I love the design of the steering wheel with the Raptor, and how the grips are on the steering wheel is also great. Notice adaptive cruise control, all that normal practical stuff. You got the new R mode for 2022. It's basically whatever you set it at. So then you can just jump in the truck, press R mode, and then it'll put everything to what you have the R mode set at, which is definitely a huge improvement and makes getting in really easy. Anyways, I love the steering wheel design. I will give us, it's between the paddle shifters and the grip on the steering wheel as an off-road enthusiast, I think that they did a little bit of a better job with the Raptor for high-speed off-roading. Low-speed off-roading, both the steering wheels are great. It's just the high-speed off-roading I prefer the Raptor setup. And you can see the different exhaust modes here. I'll include exhaust clips at the end of the video so you can hear the difference between the two trucks, V8 versus V6. But there's a lot of customization with the Raptor. That's what you're going to notice, because there's a ton of different, you guys saw there's different steering modes, exhaust modes, suspension modes, and also, funny with the fuel range, there's also different drive modes. So like there's just so many different things you can customize on the truck. And it can be kind of overwhelming, but I can tell you as a Raptor owner, if you're driving around town, you're probably going to drive it in normal mode with the exhaust in the loud mode. And then if you're having, fun sporty driving, you're probably going to drive it in sport mode. If you're going around a corner, you'll have it in sport suspension. But if you're just trying to get accelerations, you're going to have it in sport mode and then have the suspension set to normal. And then if you're off-road, Baja mode with everything turned off. And of course, exhaust in the loudest mode. Always. That's the key. You always got to have the loudest exhaust going with the Raptor. But you can see all the functions up there. The big thing is like your off-road cruise control and stability control button. And then camera system, I feel like they're both pretty good. The one thing that the Raptor lacks that the Silverado has from a camera perspective is this doesn't have the close-up wheel shots that the Silverado has. So that is a point for the Silverado from a camera perspective. Especially if you're like doing, some crawling and everything, you really want to be able to see exactly what's happening with each of the wheels. And so the Silverado lets you be your own spotter. I think that's pretty cool from a feature perspective. And as for the rest of the infotainment system, functionality is super similar with both of them. They both have split screen function. They're both really responsive. And they're both, the Raptor is more nicely integrated into the dash, I guess. It's like a part of the dash, whereas the Silverado, the touchscreen kind of looks like it's put onto the dash. But I think both of them look great. Dual zone climate, heated cooled seats, heated steering wheel. So that is the same. And then you can see here with the trailer brake controls and then the drive line select. Notice we just have a rear locker. And then the drive line on the Raptor is actually pretty advanced. We'll talk about that at the end. Notice carbon fiber. And then you can see there with the wireless phone charger, a couple cup holders, and the shifter that you can fold down with the Raptor. If you got the workbench center console, then it lets you kind of fold it flat. That's kind of part of that feature. And then nothing crazy on the center console. It's just pretty plain. If you get a 37 package, though, it says Raptor on it. But you can see the dual glove box situation there, a little bit more normal in terms of how the glove box opens, all right? And then the material use on the dash, again, kind of for that sportier theme. And then popping up top here, we've got 6 auxiliary switches. And notice here, sunglass holder and panoramic sunroof. Then you can see the power sliding rear window. And then notice universal garage door openers. Now going over the window sticker of the Raptor, again, this is the 35 package, so I feel like this is the most comparable package to that ZR2 from an equipment standpoint with the interior and exterior, and then also, from a performance standpoint, because this has these smaller tires that you can get on a Raptor. And this is also the Raptor that most people buy. It's harder to get the 37 package with the Raptors. That's why they're going for crazy amounts over sticker. That's why I bought one. Good investment, right? Anyways, you guys can see after all the options on this particular one, it's like $77,000 after destination charge and everything. So, it's like Yeah, $7,000 more than the ZR2. Is it worth $7,000 more? It depends. So the ZR2 has shocks to handle high-speed off-roading. It's got ground clearance to also handle high-speed off-roading. Now, the Raptor, again, has the coil suspension, which is going to be smoother. It's going to stay more planted. So that is a big benefit to the Raptor. Again, 35s as standard, and you get 37s. So the Raptor does have more ground clearance. Just straight out the box compared to the ZR2, and between the extra ground clearance and between the tires, right, you're going to be able to just drive it faster with high-speed stuff. Now, from a crawling perspective, right, that's where the ZR2 is going to, do really well to a certain extent, right? It does have less ground clearance on the Raptor, but it's got the front locker, which helps out, and it's got a better camera system to let you basically spot yourself, and so that is going to be a big benefit. But again, leaf springs, right, there is kind of that slight downside. It's not going to be able to flex as much as the Raptor with the coil suspension. And then from an appearance perspective, I think the ZR2 looks great from the front end. The rear end looks like normal Silverado, right? Whereas the Raptor looks unique from every single angle on the truck. So I do think that's going for the Raptor. And then from a feature perspective, right, the ZR2 has the camera mirror, and the Raptor has a panoramic sunroof. And there's some like creature comforts that one has that the other doesn't, basically. And then what I wanted to mention with the drive lines with both the trucks, the Raptor driveline is amazing. So when you pop it into 4-wheel auto or 4-wheel high, you don't get annoying steering wheel jitter, and turning radius is still actually really good, and you can like very comfortably drive at high speeds with it in 4-wheel drive, and it does an amazing job, and it's not clunky at all. Whereas the ZR2 still uses a more old school style of 4-wheel drive system, basically. And so you will get that kind of fighting with the steering wheel a little bit when you're in 4-wheel drive. I experienced that because I tested it out. I know this isn't great, but I did test it out in a parking lot again. I know it's not off-road. I'm sorry. I don't take one off-road yet, hopefully in the near future. But again, it seems to be more of like an old school type design with the 4-wheel drive system. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these trucks both have more capability than what most people are going to use them for. And even if you're a really experienced driver, they're going to be able to get you pretty much anywhere on the planet, right? And in comfort as well. That's the other thing to consider. Like, they both have heated, cooled seats, and they're just like full-blown luxury vehicles that you can take off-roading and everything. So is the Raptor worth the extra $7,000? Yes, I'd say so, with the tech it has from an off-road perspective and everything. But what I will say is it is going to be far easier to get a ZR2 at MSRP than a Raptor. A Raptor is very difficult to even get an allocation for one, let alone a Raptor allocation for MSRP. And so realistically, the price difference between them is a lot bigger than the $7,000 that the sticker price suggests. I will say that. And if you want to get a ZR2 for MSRP, the Chevy and Murray, link down in the description down below, has it. But let's get into the exhaust part.